There are three main things that people do on Stellar where it adds utility to these processes. The first is that in order to move an asset on Stellar, it has to be tokenized. So tokenization of assets is a digital representation. It could be what we call fiat assets, like a regular currency, a dollar, a euro, a British pound, a peso. Then once they have that value, they need to hold it, and they may want to diversify it. So they may start out with a US dollar tokenized on Stellar, but want to move to a Mexican peso, for example. Or they may want to send money to someone who, when they receive it, wants to change it to a different form of value. One of the things about blockchain and the reason why it's so valuable for financial systems is that it's immutable. So in the case of new technologies for moving money, there's a high motivation to tamper with these technologies. And because blockchain is so strong in terms of its immutability, its inability to be changed, and the ability to monitor it, it has a particularly high value in this use case. The third thing that people do once they have assets on Stellar is they want to send and exchange. As I was saying, going across border, making a payment to a business in another country, or even sending peer-to-peer remittances. So I can send you money if you're in a different country, and I can use Stellar to move that value. So the first step, I'm going to go through these three main ways that Stellar is used. And we'll start out with tokenization. So you might wonder, how does a dollar get on to Stellar? And that is this process called tokenization. In order to have a universal payment network where value can move, everything has to be in this form of a token. And so tokens are a redeemable, tradable representation of any asset. And it only takes a few lines of code to do it on Stellar. Token issuance is really the backbone of the Stellar network, and it's how we connect all the world's currencies and systems. It's what Stellar was built for. Asset issuance is also flexible. You can issue a token that represents anything from an ounce of gold to a piece of art to an hour of your time as a consultant. Could be a real asset, could be a service. It's up to you. Today, I'm going to talk to you about two main types of assets, which are these like non-currency assets, I'll call them. So things that are not a dollar, not a peso. Things like the bit of your time or a piece of art. Those are non-currency assets. And then we'll also talk about fiat-backed assets and the utility for those. Tokenization of securities. I think, so I'll do the same question, like how many of you own a security, own a stock? Probably everyone, right? Everyone in the room probably owns some sort of security. And I think go ahead, let's see. Is it every single person? It's gotta be, right? Everyone's got something in their portfolio, hopefully.
There are some people that raise their hands. Can you see them, Ada?
Yes, I can see. I see a sea, there's a sea of hands, yes. I can see that. Nearly everyone, or maybe everyone, has owned a stock. You probably have not owned a tokenized stock. And the reason for that is that we live in a high income economy where we have very easy access to high quality securities. I can go on E-Trade. Almost any of us can open an account at a Fidelity or an E-Trade or Charles Schwab. Any of these brokerage houses will welcome our business and allow us to buy securities and enter into other kinds of investment opportunities. However, in the rest of the world, especially in emerging markets, it is not that way at all. We can buy a share of Tesla or Apple anytime we want. But if someone who is living, let's say, in a small town in Latin America or in sub-Saharan Africa or other parts of the world, they simply don't have access to these kinds of assets. And so tokenization of securities is a really interesting use case for blockchain and for Stellar specifically. I'm going to show you an example of it. But whether it's stock or real estate, these kinds of assets, again, they're not money. They're different than a currency asset, but they can be tokenized in very similar to securities. They can be tokenized into shares and tokens on Stellar. So I'm going to show you an example of a company called D-Stock. They have kind of a fun spelling of their name. and give you an idea of how that works. So they are a company that offers access to stocks like Apple and Tesla, like you can see here, in emerging markets. They also allow micro investing, so you can buy a fraction of a share for someone who maybe only can invest, 10 euros or 20 euros. And this is a really unique way to expand access to high quality assets that otherwise they would not be able to reach. And they can also securely trade them. So inside this app is available in Europe, Vietnam, South Africa. There are a number of markets where people can then trade these fractional shares, and so it's kind of a marketplace in and of itself. It's a pretty interesting use case for financial inclusion. Here's one more. This company is called RealtyBits. And again, RealtyBits is a marketplace on Stellar, and they have built an infrastructure where people can invest in opportunities like startups, like real estate. They started out, RealtyBits' story is that they started out with their name, as you might imagine, mainly doing real estate. But then they had these verified, sponsors and investors involved in their platform, and realized that they could do a lot more. And so they expanded to other types of assets. And it allows for cap table management. It just really simplifies the whole process. Normally to invest in a private asset, it's quite a clunky process. If there's a private equity manager, then they got to talk to this person, talk to that person. It's very slow. There's a lot of friction, and it's very expensive. And so this just promotes a lot of efficiency in these kind of investor-sponsor relationships and streamlines the whole process. So RealtyBits built this platform, and it offers users access to investments that they, again, wouldn't ordinarily see, or where investing maybe in a small way would be too cumbersome. So it gives them a faster on-ramp. So as you can see from these use cases, any company, it's open source, any company can issue any kind of asset they want on Stellar. So now we're going to talk about the use case for fiat currencies. Who here has heard of the term stablecoin? How about CBDC? Stablecoin is a relatively new term. When you tokenize an asset on Stellar and it happens to be a fiat currency, we call it a stablecoin. And what that means is because blockchain assets grew up in this world of coins, like Bitcoin, everything's a coin, something's a coin. Stable coins are meant to mean that they are always tied in a one-to-one relationship with their underlying fiat currency. So let's say USDC, which is a US dollar stablecoin we'll talk about in a minute, is always worth $1 and redeemable for that dollar. So stable coins are that kind. They can be representing any of the world's currencies, but they always remain stable to the value. One coin is $1, or one coin is £1, just like that. In the case of CBDCs, this is a relatively new development in blockchain. So there are probably, I want to say 60 to 80 pilot projects going on around the world. And then there are a few that are starting to, I think, to roll out and get beyond pilot stage. But the idea of a CBDC, which stands for Central Bank Digital Currency, is beyond a stable coin. So these are a type of stable coin that a central bank issues the asset. And what that would mean is that central banker can retain control of their monetary policy, and that they can control the economics and security and functions. And there's some programmability on Stellar. There are a lot of really neat features. But CBDCs are a form of digital currency that are meant to be controlled by a central bank, just like ordinary fiat money. So it keeps that central control over the monetary policy. So we are going to talk about USDC. And I should probably mention anchors before I get any further. So CBDCs and stablecoins, as I said, are representations of regular money. So when you have a regular dollar, you give it to an asset issuer and they give you a token. And those issuers, we call in the Stellar network, we call them anchors. And that is because they anchor the fiat value to the token. And so they're a very important part of the system of onboarding value and offboarding value to the Stellar network. And you'll hear more about anchors in just a minute. One really important anchor is USDC Circle. I'm sorry, my slides are so jumpy. I need a better mouse. This graph is actually a little bit out of date. I believe we have surpassed today 40 billion USDC in circulation. So USDC stands for USD coin. As I said, many things are a coin in our world. USDC is issued by regulated financial institutions. It's backed one-to-one by US dollars, and it's governed by a consortium called Center. And so there are these kind of technical and policy standards, financial standards for stable coins. USDC is always $1. And it's available on multiple networks too, which is one of the reasons I think for its fast growth. It has transferred on chain over $1 trillion in a year, basically. And so there's a lot of movement of USDC. It's super useful as a way of moving value without losing value because it's always stable. It's a stable coin. And the USDC in circulation has been growing all the time. As I said, I think it's over 40 billion